My name is Harold. I am from the North LA County Regional Center. And today we are recording our special podcast with emergency management specialist Roy. Roy, if you don't mind introducing yourself, letting us know a little bit about your role here at North LA County Regional Center.
Will do. Thanks, Harold, for the invitation. How are we doing out there? Thanks for tuning in. My name is Roy. I'm the emergency management specialist here. I've been with the company for going on 3 years now. And my job is just to train, educate, facilitate, bring some community-based organizations and partners and educate about natural disasters.
Okay. And what does emergency management mean?
Well, it means a lot of things. It can range from basic emergencies like auto accidents, plumbing issues at home, leaks, barbecue fires, to the extremities of natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, heat, and like we just had in January of this year, some fires.
Okay. And how does this emergency management contribute to the success of our regional center and its stakeholders?
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked. So it's important that we educate our stakeholders, and we refer to stakeholders as our consumers, our vendor partners, and including our staff, because we all want to make sure that we're prepared. So the education that we bring forward is just to be ready, be prepared, because you never know what happens.
And how do you go about training stakeholders? I know you said there's different types of stakeholders. How does our employees here, how do they get trained differently from anybody else that's a stakeholder that's not our employee?
Well, I'm glad you bring that up. And what we try to do is we have to make sure that we have, especially for our service coordinators here, we provide field safety trainings, and we do that in person, or we also do that through our virtual platform, which is the LMS, where they take the opportunity to do self-paced learning. And it's mostly for staff is situational awareness, because they're visiting our consumers out in the field, so they want to make sure that they're safe and aware. When it comes to consumers, who are people who use our services, I also do a hybrid system, which is online, Zoom, but I find it to be most effective when it's in person, because they can ask questions. Sometimes they have raffle prizes and goodies to motivate them to come to the regional center, and we can alleviate whatever questions they have or any concerns.
Now, I know some of our consumers aren't just speaking English. Some of them speak Spanish, some of them speak Russian. Some people speak Farsi. How do we know that they're getting the proper training in their native language or the language that they feel most comfortable with?
I mean, all these questions are spot on. I'm glad you bring that. So yes, English is our main language. Spanish is our second. But to accommodate all the other languages and cultures that we represent here at the Regional Center, we do have support groups in their native language that are hosted, that I host emergency training workshops, and I partner with our Enhanced Service Coordination team, which is a DEIB. And they are the ones that reach out. They already have an established group, and then I go and present the materials and resources.
Do you find that training to be successful? I know you said they're established, but how comfortable are these consumers and their families coming in or learning these emergency preparedness? Are they comfortable in coming in and learning? Do we have some that are coming back over and over and they seem comfortable with it?
Well, we host, before we even send the invitation, the registration asks some questions, and it has a meter of where your experience or how do you feel, like a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is like, I have zero experience or I have no knowledge. And 5 is like, I'm ready for a zombie apocalypse.
Right.
So they come in with whatever experience they may have. And even though the course it's labeled emergency preparedness, it is more like a review of life skills. Because the last time that people had a chance to review, unless they come from natural disaster prone locations, is their elementary years. You were taught with an earthquake to drop and go underneath the desk. When you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll. But along the line of that. And then you go through your teenage years and adulthood, and you're like, you just live life and you forget about your emergency skills or life skills. So here it's more of a refresher. That's the approach.
Okay. I know there's differences. Everything's an emergency in the moment, right? I know there's a difference between an emergency and a disaster. Do you cover that across the board, or do you focus more on emergencies like not simple, but day-to-day emergencies like, I got a flat tire or, things like that, the smaller ones that are not a disaster. But do you cover all of it across the board, or how does that work when it comes
during the workshops or when we have conversations? I ask people to tell me about their experiences with emergencies. Those are exactly right. I have a flat tire or I have an issue with plumbing, like I mentioned earlier. But those are like everyday life, what people consider emergencies.
Right.
What I like to cover are the ones that really affect our backyard, like fires. high winds, floods,
Right.
earthquakes, tsunamis, because it's just random how the weather is changing. So we have to be aware and prepared. And I explained to them in the presentation about the life cycle of any emergencies. And like it is today, a beautiful day outside, we call that blue sky days. And that is when we do the workshops, it's being prepared and planning, right? Because we want to be ready in case a situation happens. We don't want to ring the bell when the event or disaster is already here, because then unfortunately, we are prone to scatter. We have the flight or the flight, right? And then so what are we going to do? So, and then we just go through the whole life cycle. But my main focus is to prepare and to plan. So when the incident occurs, you are knowledgeable of what to do, and you can be calm and level-headed for your family.
So I know there's different styles of learning. Some people are more visual, some people are auditory. I think there was a range between 4 different types of learning. How do you make sure that the emergency preparedness is taught in a way that you cover all 4?
All the learning styles.
Right.
All these great questions. And that's why I prefer in person. I like the presentations, and I like participation, and I like them to come into the regional center so that we can have that face-to-face interaction. So not only do I go through a PowerPoint presentation where it's visual, so it's in the screen and people can see it, visually. I also am pretty loud and I communicate. I'm bilingual myself, so I can do it in Spanish and I can do it in English, and I can answer whatever questions they may have. I also provide resources, so it's the actual paper materials that they can review at their own speed, if they want to. For example, there's a training session that we do about building your own emergency kit. So I bring out an emergency kit and I pretend that I'm Santa Claus, and I say, okay, everybody, let's look inside the bag and let's open it up like it's Christmas and let's start exploring. And they get the physical touch. So I try to cover the visual because everybody loves visuals. I try to do it auditory by me speaking and trying to just giving that eye contact, and I give you the hands-on experience. The only one that possibly could be missing is the drills and evacuations, but that's on them as homework.
Okay. Now let's take that word home. Is there ever any training in the field with, let's just say, a service coordinator and a consumer?
We have that option. So there are some consumers. Well, okay, let's go back. When service coordinators go to the field and they work with the said consumer, there are some instances where the consumers may want training at home because they just don't have a clue. So what happens is that we schedule an appointment where I meet up with the service coordinator and we do a self-analysis or self-assessment about their home basics. If they're in a wheelchair or if they're immobile, what is your evacuation plan? Where are you going? Which way? Where are you meeting up with said family or caretaker? If a fire were to occur, are your smoke alarms working? What is the easiest exit out? What is the route? So we come up with the plan so they're aware and they have at least some peace of mind that an emergency were to happen, they know what to do. And also preparation of a go kit. So they know if it's going to be underneath the bed or if it's going to be in the closet or in the trunk of their vehicle.
Okay. And then when it comes to training with the service coordinators, I know you may have a certain list that you want to cover. How do you make sure that, for instance, a service coordinator says, you know what, this just happened and I wasn't prepared for it? Or how do you make sure it gets implemented moving forward?
So, of course, we do have a set curriculum, if you would say, or courses or incidents that can happen. But if something were to happen out of the norm that it's not on the list, then I would just have to take more information based on the feedback and the incident, gather my information, refer with my higher ups, and then educate on said topic. Because we're always open, we're always evolving. And that's just how it goes with emergencies. They're not all one size fits all.
Okay. When it comes to emergencies, say here in the building, consumers aren't here. It's us, the service coordinators, it's public information, it's HR, it's everybody else. Right. How do we at the regional center, how are we supposed to make sure that we get trained and we know exactly what to do in whatever emergency may happen?
That's a very good question because you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others. The same concept like they say in an airplane, right? Put your face mask on before others. So we have here an emergency plan, actually here in Chatsworth, Santa Clarita, and Lancaster, all tailored for incidents if they were to happen. As for staff, what we do is we do twice a year, we try to do evacuation and drill training.
When it comes to emergencies, can you describe a challenging emergency, a situation that you've managed and that you have coordinated the response to?
Yeah, let me just start off with January. We had the January fires. It was after hours, so we were fortunate of that. But we had to take in consideration how long it was going to take. If the fire was going to be put out quickly or if it was going to escalate. And as we all know, it got bad to the point that it spread through all the LA County. It was in Malibu, Palisades, and it went all the way to Pasadena. We got some here in Castaic in our backyard in Santa Clarita. So the response was obviously you got to start with monitoring the information that's available on hand and using creditable sources. You're not going to just go to some random Instagram or Twitter because there's a lot of fake news out there. Right. So credible is from the partners that I already use. From there, we educate our leadership here, but with situational awareness reports, and based on the elevation and the recommendation, we proceed. And that's where we obviously notify our consumers and our staff. And here at the regional center, we have a platform that we use. It's called Everbridge. So it's a mass notification system based on the incident and the message that we want to provide. So going back to the fire, we would send messages to consumers stating our offices will be closed due to the reasons. And if you need any information, you can always reach out to your service coordinators, because our service coordinators are always available, especially with the virtual world technology. It's to our favor now, where we don't have to send smoke signals or bird flapping to get messages across.
You talked about credible information. How do you know, or how do you collaborate with credible sources from local or state officials in making sure that the information you're receiving that's going out to employees and the consumers, how do you make sure that it is credible information?
Well, I'm glad you asked that as well. When I first started here at the Regional Center, I made it one of my missions to make sure I established partnerships. Here at the Regional Center, we're part of coalitions throughout the whole LA County. We have the Office of Emergency Management. We're always in contact with LAFD, the fire department, at the county level at Central HQ, also with the police, and even sheriffs, because like I said, we covered 3 sites. So here in San Fernando, Chatsworth, we have LAPD, but for example, let's say Santa Clarita and Lancaster, they have the sheriff department. So we always have to be in collaboration. I hit the trade, I hit the field myself, and sometimes I go to some of the mayor's meetings, the town hall meetings, to make sure that I establish connections. And not only the people who are in leadership and council know and are aware of the regional center, but our needs, because we do service a specific demographic. Always building relationships, always attending town halls. Luckily for us, our council members always host some sessions to go and find out information, or even a disaster training. So we make sure that we show up there.
And how do you manage any resources, right? For example, you go to these town halls. How do you make sure that these relationships that you have stay strong and they stay active in order for them to make sure that they're always able to help us here at the regional center?
So not only by attending these council member meetings, but I also send emails or I invite them to come and present. This year for 2025 here at the Regional Center, our focus has been community outreach. So past December and just right now in March, early March, we had Southern California Edison come in and do a presentation. That's one of our community partners. Never been done, but we're building that bridge. We're trying to show face and let them know that we're open and we want to learn. Our staff wants to learn, our consumers. We want to have that partnership.
So they're here. What exactly is going on during these meetings?
These workshops?
These workshops.
So they're coming out and they're providing resources or information of what that utility company provides to consumers, whether it's rebates, incentives. Obviously, it's all tailored around emergency preparedness. We know that electricity is a big part of some of our consumers' life, because we do have a lot of people that are dependent on electricity. So they're informing their consumers and staff about PSPS, like a public safety power shutoff. Why is my electricity on, but my neighbors down the street is on? Questions that people probably can't get the answer to because it's just hard to get to, but we have that contact portion, that contact that can give us the information.
Okay. Let's say there is an emergency. It doesn't matter who it might be, whether it's Edison or LAD. DWP or whatever. Once an emergency has been resolved, how do you focus on recovery efforts?
Okay, again, part of the coalition that we're part of here. It depends, because here we were very fortunate that we haven't had something where we had to do a big, massive recovery due to the fires. As an example, I'm not bringing in like our other regional centers. But if we do have some drives for canned goods. We do have for diapers. We do have for necessities, whether it's clothing or basics or hygiene. So we do have some resources and recoveries that we have a drive for. However, whatever's available out there by FEMA, LOES, which is Office of Emergency Services, and they have outlets, we try to get ourselves involved so we can also have resources, not only for the future, but for the current and present time.
Did any of them have to be used recently, or?
So what we got recently was we were able to get some extra Go Kit bags and some air purifiers from Baby to Baby to distribute to affected community partners during the last fire.
Okay. I know you talked about the Go Kits. Let's go into the Go Kits a little bit because it's a standard emergency bag, right? What exactly goes into these Go Kits?
Okay. Go Kits is what we refer to as an emergency backpack. It can be as small as a simple backpack or a big duffel bag, depending on your family size, but it's just the basic necessities. Obviously, we're not going to put cans of food there because it's going to be too heavy to pull out in case of an emergency.
Right.
But we're looking at start from head to toe. If you use glasses, make sure you have an extra pair of glasses or a prescription. If you have medicine, make sure you have your appropriate medicine. If you have a pet, make sure you have pet food in there. We have water, basic amounts of water bottles like we have here, enough to last you for 3 days.
So it's not a standard kit that goes out to every family. It's basically customized.
You should definitely customize
based
it
off of your needs.
Based on your needs, yeah.
At home.
Exactly. Yes.
With the number of, it's not just family, a caregiver and a consumer, it's the entire family.
Yeah, the emergency Go Kit bag should take into consideration a family plan. When I do my presentations, there's always 3 key takeaways. It's staying informed, which is having the news, credible information. Number 2 is having supplies, which is that Go Kit we're talking about. And obviously the most important one is having a plan and communicating it with your family members. Where are you going to go? What you're going to do if stuff happens? Because an emergency doesn't always happen from the hours of 8 to 5.
Right.
It can happen at midnight.
Right.
It can happen when it's raining, and then you don't want to get cut off guard.
Right. So when it comes to emergencies, we've all lived through COVID and the pandemic. How has emergency preparedness, how has the challenges of that pandemic, how has that helped the regional center or yourself, right? How has going through that, giving you the experience, how have you taken that and make sure you applied it and made emergency preparedness what it is today at the regional center?
I mean, COVID was a rough time for everybody. And I would say that it's a positive benefit for the emergency management department itself because it created awareness that stuff does happen. I
know we had a lot of challenges at that time.
Yes.
Has there been any challenges since you've been here where you have, this whatever emergency has popped up? How have you managed that specific emergency? And I'm not just talking about like the fires, right? Something must have come up. I mean, we have so many consumers. Something along the way has probably come up where you have had to mitigate the situation, had to face that challenge.
Yeah.
How has your experience helped you in mitigating that challenge?
I think with the beauty of having COVID around is that there's created a lot of emergency awareness, so people are open to instruction.
Right.
They want responses. They want to be knowing that they're being taken care of. And going back to our Everbridge platform, that's our method here as the regional center to mitigate and provide credible information. We're not first responders. I'm not a first responder, so we can't provide that kind of resource. We are just wealth of information. So if you need resources, if you need materials, we have our website. It says go to. We have our service coordinators who are educated and trained with field safety and situational incidents. They have that knowledge. And then also here, we have these training workshops. So we have different avenues where we can provide help to mitigate. Not only like going back to the beginning of preparation and planning, but when the event does happen, what do we do to make sure that you're safe? We do wellness checks based on the location of where the incident may occur. If you're residing within 5-10 miles of said incident, earthquake maybe, landslide, mudslides, flooding, we will track you down. I have in the Everbridge platform, it provides me a visual where I know who's where. We have you in a database system for your protection, and that's how we help out, providing resources and help. And again, technology to our benefit is there. We have our system, which is run on the cloud. So if there's any electricity that shuts down here, it can still be available.
Right. I was going to get into the technical, aspect of it, because as we move forward in life, things become a lot more accessible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, we get information quicker. And I think that just helps out, getting this information, this needed information to our consumers for our service coordinators, I should say. Can you talk about how from when you got here and started implementing these emergency preparedness workshops and so forth, technology has helped you advance your preparedness for these individuals?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have the notification services, and now we can make it to where we can send it per the person's individual or native language. So we have that option. It's just not flat English, but we have Spanish, Tagalog, etc. So we have that. That's one benefit. Number two, we have the Instagram. Our public information team has a lot of social media outlets. We have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, because everybody uses different platforms. It's not, again, back to the one size fits all, does not apply here at the regional center. We are all independent individuals, and we like certain platforms.
Right.
So that's what we have. What else do we have for technology?
So basically, if you have a certain way to get your information, whatever platform, it's there. We provide that for whoever it is. It might be the service coordinators. It might be the consumers. So we have that. Whereas before, I think people have really, the advancement of this technology, right? Before, it was just a poster on the wall. One training, one workshop, poster on the wall. Now it's in your pocket. Anytime you get on your computer, you have that option.
Well, technology has come a long way after COVID, because they've taken feedbacks and understood what people like to hear. Going back to what you like to see, if it's visual, there are posters plastered everywhere now. I mean, advertisement in the streets or in the metro sign, it's digital, right? So we have that they can replace it with whatever. It could be like, let's say, an advertisement for beer one day, and then the next day when it needs to click on to emergency, they can give you notifications. What else? The media channels, like the channels, Fox News, KTLA, the local news, they provide all this information, which is great. And whether it's in English, whether it's in Spanish, again, or any native language. And then here at the regional center, like I mentioned, we're doing what we need to do, due diligence, based on the survey and feedback that we got, to provide information with whatever outlet you feel comfortable with, and in any language.
That's good. That's good. I see you walking around. You're talking to as many individuals as you can. I always, when I run into you, you're talking to somebody, trying to inform them. Do people know that you are the person when it comes to emergencies that you should be contacted? And if this is the first time they've ever seen you or heard of you, where can they reach you?
So you make a good point. Emergency management is a small department here at the regional center, but we're small and mighty. We have a presence, and that's pretty much since I first started here at the regional center. I was instructed to make sure that I befriend everybody. Everybody needs to learn about emergency management. And that's why it's my mission and passion to talk to everybody and educate, provide resources so everybody can be ready. If they need to get a hold of me through Teams internally here, they can, or they can always shoot me an email, rortega@nlacrc.org, to get more information. So talking to especially people who are new, I like to go through the NSO program, which is a new staff orientation, to make sure that staff is knowledgeable of what they need to do in case of emergencies. Like you mentioned earlier, if we're in the building, what do they need to do? If they're out in the field, what do they need to do? Again, we have the flyers that we provide education with, or they have resources online that they can take at their own pace.
You're based in Chatsworth. We also have Santa Clarita and Antelope Valley.
Mm-hmm.
How much time do you spend at those offices doing what you do here?
I visit them at least once a month to make sure, because like I said, there's always new staff coming in, or there's always questions, or there's resources like survival guides that I take up there that they can use for their consumers, or even resources that they can transport from Chatsworth. I transport it to them so they can share with the community. So I try to spend at least 1-2 days once a week out there in Santa Clarita and Lancaster.
And then do you do any workshops out there like you do here? Or is it okay?
Yes, I make sure that I'm equal opportunity. Right now, the focus has been Chatsworth and Lancaster, because that's where the large caseloads are. But we do have some in Santa Clarita as well, because we do service all three areas. So I want to make sure that all three areas can get accessible information.
The last time you were out on the field, let's just say the service coordinator had you come over, just go over, emergency preparedness at consumers' home, let's just say. How receptive was that family with the information you gave them. I don't know if you can gauge how they probably perceived the situation to be before you actually went through it.
Very open. I'll tell you this, because they always see the service coordinator, so they know what they're expecting.
Right.
And they know that I have to go through the IPP. We got to review set questions, or maybe they want specific services from a different agency. So when I walk in, it's an additional service that we bring in.
Okay.
We're preparing them, and it's life skills. Back to the life skills. And it's just review of their home. Yes. You know that it takes an outsider to provide a different perspective, and that is me. I'm that outsider seeing your place for the first time. You're letting me in, and you're letting me just give you an assessment.
Right.
So they're open because they want that feedback.
Right.
Because they know that it's preparation for when that, not that if, but when.
Right. Just in case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the perspective when I go to a consumer for the first time.
Right.
Let me do a vendor. Right. So vendors are supposed to have emergency plans, binders, evacuation postings on the door. They're supposed to educate not only their staff, because there's turnover there, and they have schedules, whether depending on the size of their facility, 3 months, 6 months, or annually. So when I go in there with, let's say, quality assurance from community services, we do an unannounced visit, and that's when I just pop in, right? Because it's unannounced, right?
Right.
And we provide a review of what they have. So while the QA or community services is doing their job and due diligence to review and make sure that they're all lined up, I do my job to make sure that their emergency management plan is up to, obviously up to code, but also up to date.
Okay. So let's go back to the office now. Let's talk about, individuals that work here. I know you said that, we have trainings on the LMS and so forth. We have, I think it's five floors that we're on here in this building. How do we make sure that each floor is informed? Not just, hey, log into your LMS, right? Like if I walk into...
During an emergency? Or
I'm just saying like...
In general?
In general. I go to the second floor. I'm just saying the second floor, I'm not calling anybody out because I don't go down there. But if I walk into the second floor, is there any information posted? If there is, where would it?
Yes, of course. So let me tell you, when you get off each floor, we have elevators here.
Right.
There's an evacuation plan. Right. In the elevator, there's also staircases. Here at the building, staircases only go down. We can't go up because we're doing that to preserve an airlock and safety, of course, because we don't want anybody coming in from the bottom up, right? So that's active shooter, protection. So then we have evacuation plans posted by the staircase, posted by the elevator, and we also have floor wardens. So floor wardens are in each specific unit with each department on certain floors, and they are trained in case of any emergencies were to occur or if the alarm were to go off. They would wear their vest. They'd have a checklist of individuals that pertain to that certain floor, and they'd get a head count.
And then the floor wardens do you do anything as far as workshopping or training with them in order for them to stay up to date?
Yes.
As a floor warden and, protectors of our lives at that point?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I mentioned earlier that we were reviewing the emergency operations plan because that's obviously an annual update. And we have to make sure that we're enforcing what we preach, right? So once we have all the executive leadership being trained and educated on what the procedures are, we go to the second layer, which is our floor wardens. And then they get the trainings based on what's expected during set scenarios.
Okay. Do the floor wardens responsible in any trainings after that? Or is it just making sure, hey, this is the information that you need. This is what you need to do in this situation?
No. So the floor wardens are just responsible for what they learn, which is wearing the vest, which is having the checklist, the head count for the people that are protected situated in that unit or that floor. The training when it comes to staff will come from HR and from office services and myself during evacuation drills. So it's different layers and different people involved.
Should these floor wardens, make themselves known?
Visible?
And I don't mean during an emergency, right? Because God forbid we want to be in an emergency, but just for peace of mind, should they, hey, if anything ever goes down,
they should. If you're, let's say, for example, if you're in let's go to example, HR. If HR has their floor warden.
The best department, by the way.
Yeah, I heard, as long as it's in the check on time. That's accounting. Anyhow, okay, so if they are, there's a floor warden, they should have it clearly marked where there should be like a vest hanging outside their door with the checklist with the people who are within that department.
Okay.
So each department will have a person with a vest or a floor warden.
So it's not just like the entire floor. It's
It's
they
per
just say
department.
that Okay,
Yeah,
so there's multiple
floor wardens.
in on the floor.
Because, for example,
and then
let's say-
each one is kind of like a battalion that.
Yes, because you're going to need
it's a
one
squadron.
at the elevator point where it's going to tell you make sure that you go down, or excuse me, not use the elevator,
Stairs.
right? And there's going to be another one at the staircase saying go out this way, and then there's going to be another one that's going to have all these, if they're in the same area, outside at the meeting point.
Okay.
So we have different points of contact, but they're all the same one goal: safety.
Okay.
To make sure that you're accounted for.
All right.
Now we also have, let's say the communication were to go down, we do have walkie-talkies and we do have a satellite phone.
And those are making sure we always have the batteries. They're always charged.
Always
up.
charged. They're on deck charged.
God forbid we go through an emergency, but at least we know we have.
But we're safe.
We're safe.
And we got the trainings.
And we got the trainings. Okay, let's go back to the consumers themselves.
Okay.
When it comes to emergencies, right? Each one is going to be different. Each one is going to, go through whatever situation. Are our consumer services coordinators the first ones they should contact? Is that how it works, or are they waiting? Are they waiting for communication through their phone or through an email?
Well, I hope that when they go through the process and they get to know the service coordinator through an IPP or establish a relationship, they know. And they ask questions about emergency preparedness. Mm-hmm. It's a requirement that they ask about health and safety, if you feel safe at home, or what would they do in case of incidents would occur. Okay. So that's step one. And they call that the CEDAR intake and the IPPs. And that's where they gather that information. So now, if something were to happen, going back to technology, most people like to watch TV. Or if you've probably received it here in LA County, the Office of Emergency Management sends an alert, so you get your phone, you get that alert. Right. That's one way. So when that were to happen and that level gets escalated, you best believe for sure that the regional center will also follow up and give you that notification via Everbridge. So if we have your updated information, whether it's a text messaging phone number, a voice call, or an email, we have that information already in our database, and we will try to reach out to you. Not only one time, but 2 times, 3 times. We will continue to reach out to you until you confirm that, yes, I have received the message. Then from there, within the statement, it's already, depending again on the incident, the bottom line will say, if you have any questions, please reach out to your service coordinator.
Okay. Now, let's say that we'll go back to consumer services. We'll go back to employees in that situation. Let's say some of them didn't get a message or a phone call. What would you tell them to do in order to make sure that we have their updated information?
Is this for staff or is this for consumers?
For staff.
For staff, they have to make sure that they. What's happening now at the regional center is that we're implementing updated contact information.
Okay.
So if you're a new hire, obviously we gather your information there. But every quarter, and I know that human resources is providing or asking for information from their employees to make sure that we do have the information updated.
Okay. And let's say we haven't asked for it. Do you just say, go on ADP, make sure your profile is updated? Or is that something that we as a staff, or I should say HR, should ask for? Or do we remind them? Or what do you recommend at that point?
Because we've had multiple emergencies since I've been here.
Right.
HR already has created a cadence of every quarter asking for new material if it needs to be updated.
Okay.
But I also recommend if you always go in and like you do your time and you clock in, make sure as a staff member you have your profile updated.
Updated information. Okay. So we'll jump back to consumers. How can consumers learn more about being prepared in emergencies?
I'm glad you bring that up. So we told you about having workshops here at the regional center, right? But going back and touching on the how can they learn more aspect is that the county puts on trainings, full-scale exercises, they call it, or tabletops. So I'm going to be part in April. They've asked for participants to be trained or reactionals or be volunteers for situations. In this incident, it's a full-scale exercise where it's going to be hosted at the LA airport, and they're going to pretend that I am a passenger and I've suffered a crash, which is unfortunately something that's happened. But now they're training for it. They're trying to see what they can learn from it. And this training is not only for consumers on how to react, but also for our first responders on how to mitigate such emergency. So it's a learning experience for both. So if people want to learn more, there are options out in the community through Eventbrite, where they can participate in disaster preparedness.
So it's not just the workshops we do here or on field training. How do we keep consumers motivated to keep learning more about emergencies and not just, sit back and wait for somebody to tell them what to do?
That's a difficult question because, you can only motivate people with what you got.
Right.
And what we have here, sometimes we have donuts and coffee. And that's it. And that's pretty much it to an extent of motivation. Everybody's always, what's in it for me? But if you really think of what's in it for me, it's the knowledge of knowing how to stay prepared to take care of not only yourself, but also your family members. So if that is worth anything, I would just sign up for it.
Okay. And let's say in the field, you've already visited a home or a certain dwelling, let's say. How do we keep those consumers prepared with the most, the newest emergency prepared? How, if something was to be updated in your training, how do we make sure that somebody you've already visited a month ago, gets updated? Are you relaying that to the consumer?
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about that in emergencies is that they're all pretty much constant. Okay. An earthquake is going to be an earthquake.
Right.
A flood's going to be a flood.
Right.
Basically how it is in your household, where the water is going to run through, or where there's a puddle that's going to get stuck. Or if you live somewhere in the San Fernando Valley, you're not supposed to be driving in Sunland or in Caluca Lake because you get flooded. So avoid all that. And those are similar incidents. Obviously, you try to repeat or review what's the most affected area. But what you do want to make sure that you replenish is stuff inside your bag. Back to the stuff that is your prescription still the same for your eyes? Is your medication expired? Does your water need to be replaced because of the plastic? So items like that. That's what I would recommend. And that you should do on an annual basis.
Annual basis. Okay. What advice would you give someone who has no idea about emergency preparedness?
I said, we live in LA, Southern California. If you don't remember the Northridge earthquake, lucky you.
Because you're young.
Which is good. However, again, we are surrounded by emergencies constantly with the weather, climate changing. This year we had Christmas and then a week later we had fires. You can't avoid that.
Right.
But 2 weeks ago, it was like pouring cats and dogs of rain. You can't avoid that. The weather is in your face. Emergencies always happen. Again, like I said, it's not if, but it's when it's going to happen. So the more you're prepared, whether it's having a go kit, whether it's going to our workshops here at the office, or if it's just learning on your own through participation or going to different websites that educate on this material, I would take advantage of it. It's for your livelihood.
Do you see yourself, having more workshops moving forward, or do you think you'll remain with the same schedule? I know our caseload, the number of, let me say that one more time. Do you see yourself adding more emergency preparedness workshops moving forward? Because I know we have a lot more consumers and a lot more service coordinators that are coming on board. Do you see yourself adding more workshops, or will you maintain the same schedule?
Well, for this year, we've done a lot of community outreach, and we have it planned. We're trying to educate on CPR, first aid, hands-on. That way, you're not going to get certified, but at least you know how to take care of somebody's life. We're going to try to, again, with all these partnerships that I had before, like first responders, like the fire department, the sheriffs, the police. I want to bring them into our regional center office so they can get a perspective of who our people are, our demographic, but also what services we may need. Obviously, it's tailored. We also host a vendor expo, where that vendor expo is usually in the fall. And what we do is we have all of our vendor service agencies that we have and we utilize here at the regional center. And we invite the consumers. We invite the family members to come and learn.
How successful are those vendor fairs? Do a lot of consumers?
It's a great turnout. It's to the point that now we are expanding. Our next one is going to be in September, October. It's still be tuned to our website. We're going to host it at a larger facility. We're going to go from a hotel, conference room area, and we're going to go to Cal State Northridge because we need more space. The demand is there. And with the demand, we need to grow. And we're even bringing different workshops, not only, but emergency management will be there. And I'll be giving my presentation, but we're going to have employment services.
Okay.
We're going to have additional members from the community services that are going to be providing details and information that they need to learn about that we offer here in-house.
Right. Now, let's say, I know you're going to give a time and date and so forth. And CSUN being basically down the street from us, do you see yourself having any workshops in Santa Clarita, Antelope Valley in that similar?
Yes. So we're also going to we usually have it again, back to our cadence and our larger communities. Right. So we will have our large one in Cal State Northridge, October-ish, and we're also going to have one in Lancaster. Okay. So we're working on the location now, but we will feature the same kind of setup. Workshops, vendors, and we're going to mirror that in Lancaster.
As far as emergency preparedness in, outside of here in the San Fernando Valley, let's say Antelope Valley, how receptive our consumers out there when it comes to emergency preparedness? Because I know
it's a different beast, but it's. I'll tell you this: when I do my NSOs, which is the new staff orientations, I've asked who's here from the Lancaster area. Right. People have raised their hands, and then I said, "How many of you have a bunker, or how many of you have a shelter in place?" And they have. Okay. They raise their hand and they say, "Yes, I know," because. If you lived in San Fernando, you get heat. I get it. I understand. Right. But if you go to Lancaster, you get some heat. It's extreme. Yeah. So I know that when it's cold, it's cold. When it's hot. And it takes a certain individual to live in that community. So you got to be prepared. It's a little out there. It's the northernest part of our county here in LA. So you need to be prepared. And they're aware. And we want to make sure that we emphasize that every conversation, every workshop, that you need to take care of yourselves because they don't have the resources like this community does.
Yeah, it's a little different out here compared to them.
Yes, I'm not going to say it's on the sticks, but it is a little rural sometimes.
It sure is. Out here, we got a few trees out there. They got cactus.
Exactly.
Is there anything you want to share about your experience or just emergency management in general before we go?
I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here, the public information and the regional center to allow emergency management to be kicking off this amazing podcast program.
It's our first one.
It's our first one. Yeah, but I think I think we're kicking it off with useful information. It's something that people need to learn about or just always trying to adapt and incorporate new things. And again, it's life skills. It's not, it's always good to have emergency preparedness, tools, resources, and there's items that you may not think you need, but it's out there for you. Yeah. For example, solar panels, generators, there's rebates, there's incentives. You got to partner up with your utilities because it's for your own benefit.
And you're doing your best to get us, in that situation where we educate our consumers. So that's very much appreciated coming from, I'm speaking from everybody else, and what you do. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank anybody that's watching or listening. This is our first one, first of many. So again, I want to thank Roy for coming here and sharing with us what he does and how it impacts our communities, our consumers, our staff, how he relates this information with our vendors to our consumers and our staff. And thanks for growing this emergency preparedness that although we don't really see it on a daily basis, I want to make sure that everyone understands that it's going to happen sooner or later, right? There's something that's going to come up, whether it's small, whether it's big. So I want to thank you for at least giving us that opportunity to fall back on something that we can, so that when something does happen, we're not just running around. Yeah, we have something set, not just here at, in the offices, but out in the field with the consumers. Yeah. I think that in itself shows how much we actually care about what we're doing here at the regional center. I know, the day-to-day stuff gets in the way, but thank you so much because it goes a long way.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I know our consumers, they'll appreciate it. Everyone else does, because sooner or later when it does happen, we're always going to be like, oh, thank God Roy was friendly enough to just walk in and just introduce himself and say, hey, this is what I do. This is, what you should know. If there are any questions, always reach out. Again, because sooner or later, something will happen. So with that said, thanks again. Thank you for watching or listening wherever you are. And again, this is our first of many podcasts to educate our staff, our consumers, and anybody who's interested in what we do here at the Regional Center. And we'll see you next time.